This session is brought to you by the Influence Marketing Platform. The Influence Marketing Platform is so intuitive, you'll swear it was built just for you. So go ahead and learn more about the automation software and get a demo at emarketingplatform.com.
Great example. All right, next up we have Jorge.
All right.
He is the man. You may have known him from things like he was the MC yesterday. But what he's talking about here is way cooler. I don't even think the MC part's gonna make your LinkedIn profile.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe my Instagram.
Okay, that's cool. Let me get you set up real quick. You have this.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. So, as Mike said, so my name is Jorge Selva. I work on growth marketing at G2 currently. So G2 is a platform for business software reviews. So if you want to see what MailChimp reviews actually look like from real users, you go to G2 and search MailChimp in our search on our homepage. But today I'm here to talk about the email program that we built at Reverb.com. For those who don't know, Reverb is a marketplace for musicians. If you want to sell a 1967 Fender Strat, you'd go to Reverb, list it there. We have awesome, had awesome content just like on everything related to the music space. When we were kind of redesigning our email program, kind of to Betsy's point as well, we were doing this while we were moving from MailChimp to Marketing Cloud. I think when you're, so we were moving to Marketing Cloud, which is a huge woe in the room. So we were having to work with a lot of constraints, definitely some frustration points. So I'm gonna walk you through kind of like how we worked within the limits of an ESP and like how we got the most value out of that. Ultimately, what we did was we focused on increasing the value of our email program. The main reason that we were kind of redesigning things was to reduce our dependence on paid spend. So we had this great email list. We weren't doing all the great automated, segmented, wonderful email things that we've been learning about for the past few days. And I just wanted to walk you through 3 examples that kind of highlight that. So, what we did in over a year, we essentially built a program that went from doing about 5% of GMV, which is gross merchandise volume, so sales on the Reverb platform, to about 16% of the entire company top line. So going from 5x or 5% to 16% kind of speaks to how we were able to really target, segment, and effectively speak to our audience in a way that moved from kind of like the one-off email blasts of the past. So just to give you more context, at Reverb, overall, we were doing about 600 million in just total sales on the marketplace. It's about $42 million in revenue, and the really exciting thing was just the scale that we had. We had 10 million visitors, email lists in the 1.5, 2 million total range. So we really had great content, a lot of people coming to the site, but we were still doing one-off email blasts, and we weren't kind of tailoring the experience to the individuals, kind of where they were, and speaking to them based on whether they're an electric guitarist, an acoustic guitarist, a drummer, a synth player. There are so many different personas that we had on our site, but we were treating them all as kind of the same. This module on the bottom right is an example from our site of recommendations for electric pianos. If you're an electric pianist or you searched for synthesizers or pianos, you would see this on your homepage, but you wouldn't have that experience in your email. So we were trying to figure out how to port over all of these content pieces, recommendation pieces, and everything to kind of create that personalized experience at scale. So, a few words of advice just from our experience. Really, it's all about starting small and segmenting intelligently. I think when you're creating an automation program, when you're trying to create tailored content based on segments, as a systems thinker, as a data-driven marketer, you want to recreate everything and have it be perfect. It's not going to be the case. So don't try to boil the ocean. Try to really dial in on where you have the most coverage. So in our case, it was music content, it was listings, it was great guitars and drums and rare items that people really wanted to see. In your business, it could be content, it could be, if you're Zillow, you might have great local housing that somebody might be interested in based on their browsing behavior. Which segments drive the most value? I think a lot of times we'll focus on the wrong parts of the business. If you can break down who's actually driving meaningful impact for your business, that's probably the place where you're going to find the most value. So hone in on that and figure out how to deliver a great experience for that audience. Testing quickly and manually, again, I think starting with the manual approach and figuring out how to port over what you have in your database in the specifics of your business, and not worrying about the automation part until it works. That's super important. As marketers, I think we want everything to be perfect and automated. Again, it's not going to be the case. Automate what works, but focus on testing quickly and manually. The last point is just refreshing content frequently. I think that we've been talking about the set and forget mentality. Ditch that. Make sure that you're getting in there and giving people the most fresh content. So let's dive in. For testing, I think to start, it's really important just to wrap your head around what a potential project could take in terms of investment, time, which resources are needed, and just wrap your head around what's possible. So this is a really just simple example. Whatever it would look like for your business, it could change based on which funnel impact you're trying to have, what type of content you have, the ideas that are floating around based on your specifics. But I think it's just important to track this and track kind of overall what you expect the outcome to be, how many resources are going to be required to make it happen, and then once you launch something, test report on the actual impact. So what did we do? First one, we created a personalized weekly newsletter. So we were sending out 3 newsletters every week. It was silly. It was going out to everybody regardless of what we knew about them. So we took our content and we actually created a player profile for everybody based on their browsing behavior, what they had purchased, kind of our best guess at what their top player affinity is. So in my case, I could be an electric guitarist, Mike might be a drummer, and on a weekly basis, to start, we ported in content very simply. We had a title field, copy field, URL, and an image URL. And using smart modules, using merge tags, we were able to create, so here's an example of what those merge tags might look like. I think merge tags is MailChimp terminology. Whatever your ESP uses, tokens, whatever it may be, use these to your benefit to ideally create a personalized experience. So this is the weekly email newsletter. In the past, this would have just been all crammed into one single email. So if you were a drummer, you might receive the guitar thing at the top and just have this endless feed. We moved to a model where, with these dynamic modules, we had a tailored experience for electric guitarists, keys and synths players, drummers, whatever it may be. They had tailored, relevant content that's fresh. We have stacked picks for the guitar section on the left. On the right, we had pedal picks that were relevant to that artist piece from that week. So again, this is really simple. This is just building a personalized experience using 4 fields for each individual, a few merge tags in your template, and on the user side, it looks like a very personalized, relatively relevant email, I think. This is just speaking to being willing to try something manually and working with what you have and not worrying about creating the most perfect automated system off the bat. Another module that we worked on, within the emails, within the weekly newsletter, was this concept of handpicked deals and steals. So for guitarists, they would see a somewhat personalized, but mostly this was just bucketed based on what they had browsed. So if you've been browsing a lot of electric guitars, these are kind of this is our best guess at what might be most interesting to you based on rarity, based on price. These are all kind of tailored to this specific person's price affinity. So it's all sub $500, it's all vintage, it's all used, and it's ideally as relevant as possible. For the retargeting module, in this case, we did collaborate with our data science team. We imported these recommended products based, again, on browsing and previous purchase behavior. And the merge tags really are your best friend. Using those tokens, not worrying about having to bring in, there are awesome tools that do recommendations and all these, very fancy automated systems. But again, start simple, work with what you have, and ideally give people a relevant experience. So the results, I think, speak for themselves. What I really wanted to track with this one was click-to-open rate. That was kind of our proxy for like how valuable that email was to that person or how relevant it was. So jumping that from 19% to 25% speaks to just how relevant that was. If that content is speaking to the audience, they're that much more likely to click. That's kind of the metric that we focus on for this one. And then the retargeting module specifically had a 5 percentage point jump. So that's not a 5% increase, it was a 5 percentage point overall increase, and conversion rates also increased. So being targeted, doing very simple player profile based building of emails results in great results for the business overall. Second email that I wanted to highlight was the relevant post-purchase flow. This is what it looks like. This isn't the finalized version, but just to give you an idea of how we were thinking through this flow. Kind of similar to Betsy's example from Lenovo. If somebody's made a purchase, they should be treated differently than somebody who hasn't purchased. If they, in our case, we also have, we had Reverb LP, which is a marketplace for records and physical media. So being context aware, knowing what your subscribers are signing up for, and in the case of Reverb, if we have an app, we should probably be sending people sales notifications in app as opposed to email. So this is just kind of a sense of how we were thinking about things. And the main email that we focused on for the post-purchase flow was after somebody purchases an electric guitar, in this case a Moog Mother 32. If there are any synth nerds out there, it's a really cool synth. They're made in North Carolina. Moog is an awesome US-based company. You can go on Reverb and research that. But basically, like, we wanted to just create that content that was speaking to what we knew about the person. So here's an example of what one of these post-purchase emails look like. We worked with our content team to create this newsletter, or this news piece on our blog. So maximizing your Korg Volcas for recording and performance. The Korg Volca is this really small, cheap synthesizer, but it's really cool. You can do a lot of cool things. So we took the time to actually create that custom content. We also added just other recommendations. So people that buy Volcas are usually interested in other pieces in the same line. So we also added the recommended picks at the bottom. This other piece that's kind of, this was a new Volca in the series that had come out. But again, this whole email was very simple to create. It was a simple trigger. So once somebody purchase a Volca specifically, they would receive this immediately. After the item shipped. So after the item shipped, before they got it, they kind of had this content to prep them for once they received it. And overall, our 30% open rate, 10% click-through rate, and just launched across 50 products. This was able to just increase that retention. The conversion rates on like the recommendations was insane. Like I didn't think that after somebody bought a Korg Volca, they would go in and buy another one immediately, but they did, and they like loved that part, which is awesome. So just try to get in your user's shoe and figure out, in their shoes and figure out what they might be interested in. If it takes some time to work with your content team to build that specific like blog post, go that extra step. It will work out, it'll yield great results. The last one that I wanted to talk about was a personalized automated email. So on Reverb, if you search for a specific term or if you add something to your feed, you would receive daily feed emails, weekly feed emails as new listings come on the site. We would alert you if things go on sale. You would get these notifications to alert you about what you might be interested in. Before they were pretty drab. It was, think about like Amazon's emails where it's just like recommendations like endlessly and it's all crammed into the same thing. We took some time to kind of redesign our modules to make them a little bit more just easily digestible, specifically adding the price. That was an interesting one where we thought having the price, especially for higher ticket items, would reduce click-through, but that significantly increased it. So adding as much context as possible for what you're showing somebody is really important. We also, again, using the player profile and the merge tag field example from the first slide, we were able to add dynamic modules based on their player profile at the top. So drummers get this drum-specific header image, guitarists get a different one, synth players get a different one. You get the idea. We refresh those weekly. Overall, just the idea here was to add as much segmentation and personalization based on what we knew about the individual. So these emails were sent to subscribers, again, when fresh products were available. We customized the header. We also included fresh news pieces that were relevant to these audiences. We'd update those weekly and just introduce like as much relevant content as we could. So our click to open rate on this one increased by 5 percentage points. This was just, I think, more of a brand experience. If somebody is coming to Reverb and they're seeing great content on the site, it's important to mirror that experience and make sure that what you're taking from your site or the emails that you're sending kind of mirror the experience and have that cohesive brand feel and ethic behind them. So what I really wanted to highlight is most of us, or at least in my experience, send too many emails. I think we should focus on sending fewer emails that are more targeted and figure out how to speak to your audiences at the level that they are. Take the time to build the content that makes sense for them. Start small, test, automate what works. But in our just over a year, as I said earlier, we went from being about 6% of total company sales on the platform to 16+% just in email. So we were doing 50 million plus in sales from email alone. We sent fewer, more targeted emails. People were much more engaged. Unsubscribe rates dropped. And overall, just the methodology of launching ideas quickly, automating the winners, and just moving on from things that aren't working allowed us to just quickly work through a lot of these concepts, put them into practice, and just grow what was once a one-off, treat everybody the same, to a more evolved, personalized experience. So, broken slide, great. So we went from about 90% click to open rates to 25% click to opens. Again, that's kind of how I'm treating how relevant the content is to the individuals, and then GMV jumping from 5% to 16+%. When I first mentioned Salesforce Marketing Cloud, tons of limitations there, but there's a lot you can do despite those limitations. Work with what you have, work with your data, work with your product and data teams. Don't over-engineer it, start simple. And this is just a recap of the previous couple slides. So, thank you.
Displayed perfectly up there, but it made me think. So when you were going to your boss and you're saying, "Hey, I think we need to do a little bit differently what we're doing."
Yep.
How did you get the sign off to kind of get the content created to make those feeds more personable, and then maybe some extra engineering time, and then actually prove the ROI?
Yep. So I think most people are pretty visual. So if you can go to your boss and say, "Hey, we've thought through what the impact on the business might be from some of these projects," and just show that you're thinking through this and understanding not only your hours, but also engineering hours and kind of the impact across the business, that opens up the conversation and helps them see that you're thinking through things methodically. So I essentially just presented this as a very simple, like, here are some things we want to test. We're going to start small. We're not going to entirely stop sending like the one-off emails to start. We're going to figure out what works, and I think the first email that we launched was the personalized newsletter. We sent it to, I think, like 5% of the audience. We ran that for a month, and the click to open rates and the conversion rates on site were significantly higher. So once he saw the impact on the business, he was bought in and understood that we were getting charged less for sending fewer emails. Unsubscribe rates were dropping, and everything, all the metrics that we really cared about were going up. So I think I just summarized that by saying, do your homework, present a case that shows that you're thinking about it and how you're going to measure results, and just report back and keep your boss in the loop. I think that's a big thing. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a
Oh,
question.
awesome, cool.
Yep.
So one of the biggest challenges I find with automated campaign is that whenever we automate something like this, after sending it to a customer a couple times, the performance starts to decrease. I guess because people recognize the same format.
Yep.
So what would be your suggestion in terms of ensuring the long-term effectiveness of any automated campaigns?
Yep. So in the case of like the post-purchase content, people usually just purchase something once. I think that's less of a relevant example. The feed email specifically is one that people receive daily or weekly or however frequently there's new content available. Just a simple header image swap, like we saw, like our baseline, we saw that as well, where the brand was the same, the imagery was the same, but just doing that simple swap like once every 2 weeks, every month, like there's endless content that could be popped into that top little module. Keeping that fresh just helps people like realize that this isn't something that's just going out consistently, it's not the same thing. We also added recent blog pieces to the bottom, so any content that's relevant, if you have something that's coming out weekly, put that at the bottom as like a, hey, did you want to check, did you want to read more about drums, or here's our most recent Alessandro Cortini from 9 Inch Nails artist spotlight. Like whatever it is, there's something that is specific to your business that you could keep just swapping out, and it's usually as simple as updating an image or adding new content. So, yeah.
I love how much you simplified this, but I immediately think of the fact that I know plenty of musicians that play 2 or more instruments.
Yep.
How did you manage that? Did you see it often in your data?
Yeah, that's a great point. So the player profile is like the top affinity. We also had 3 like secondary, third affinity, and fourth. We always defaulted to primary, but if we had relevant content, for example, like if we would treat like any week, we would have high, medium, and low quality content. So if we had a really high quality drum content that week, and somebody was like a secondary drummer, we would over-index that and we'd put that as like their top module. So we had some weighting in there that accounted for what would be most relevant based on like other things. I think that long-term, keeping an eye on like what's, like making sure like the top player profile is being updated is super important too, because like a lot of times like, drummers might stop playing drums for a little while and picking up the guitar. So like making sure that you're keeping that fresh too is important, because otherwise you're just going to be stuck in the same thing. And we definitely saw that. Like people change a lot more frequently than you'd expect. So keeping it fresh and just making sure that there's like a weighting system to account for those variations. Yeah.
On your Airtable slide, the projected impact, how did that align with actual impact?
Yeah, good question. So that was, so basically like, that was a ease of implementation, potential impact, overall resources needed. So it was a few different things. It was totally just like a best guess, to be honest. The post-sale emails, I think, were definitely the most high. The recommendations, those were sprinkled in a bunch of different emails, so I wouldn't say, I wouldn't consider that as high as the targeted post-sale, just because that was like a tweak to the existing model and we just implemented that across. So in reality, I would say that targeted post-sale email was super on brand. People loved it. Like we just got people writing in all the time, responding. Again, mine through, like ideally you're not using a no reply email address. Read through those responses and people will tell you what they like, what they don't like. And those are the ones that people are like, wow, I'm super excited to get my item. Thanks for sending this. It was just overall really well received. So.
And then just follow up, how many people were on the team to sort of maintain this? Like swap out the headers?
Yeah, so it was basically me on the email and marketing side. We had our content team that would help with just making sure that we knew what was coming down the pipeline and what would be the most valuable to different audiences. And then on the engineering side, once things started to work, we started to automate a lot more of this. So for example, this was just the test version. Once this proved results, we automated this, and that was just done by the data team. They'd push in a new set of content for individuals on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So overall, one person with a little bit of content help and data and product, once it's proving value to automate, I think it can do a lot. So it's more about focusing on like what you can do and where you're at right now. Yeah.
So when you guys started moving to this, I guess my question is, you had an existing database that I'm assuming is pretty large.
Yeah.
And you've been emailing in the same way for some time. How do you rebuild the trust when you've kind of burned some bridges by sending bad emails for a while?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't say we were in a good place. Our emails weren't bad. But if you were a drummer, you would receive 10 articles that were relevant to guitarists, synth players, etc. So you had to really dig through those emails, and I think people weren't as drawn to something that they had to dig through. So I think simplifying it was just a matter of giving people the content that they were already finding just in a more digestible way. So it's not like we were sending terrible emails and like people were pissed at us. It was more a matter of just simplifying and helping them kind of cut through the noise. So I think generally cutting through that's the way to approach it.
Sorry, I did not mean to imply
Yeah.
you were sending bad emails.
Oh, no. I'm super offended.
I work in an agency, and I think we have a client who has gotten to the point where their emails are just completely ignored.
Yeah.
Because they have been sending junk for so long, but they have a limited customer base. So it's not like you can just go out and get a bunch of new customers in to then start fresh. So it's like, how do you go back and say, we're really sorry, we sent you all these bad emails,
Yeah.
but you won't open our emails even for us to tell you we're sorry.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a tough case, but I think if you really like cut back on send volume and do as much work as you can to figure out what's relevant to that person and like speak to them as an individual and try to provide value more than anything, it'll take a while, but you have to slowly rebuild that trust. And I think it's about, again, segmenting and understanding who that person is. And it's tough work, but you're gonna have to, I think, just rebuild that trust slowly and again, just show that you know who they are and like what's relevant to them and what you understand about their specifics. So. Oh. Thank you.
Awesome.